Okay, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're literally putting on our detective hats. We're going to apply some objective Aristotelian logic to a seriously compelling historical mystery. We're looking into William Branham, the figure who basically reshaped a massive global worldview with his teachings on end-time prophecy. But hey, instead of just going with our gut or relying on feelings to evaluate his extraordinary claims, we're going to use something incredibly powerful: reason. We are setting up a structured, logical approach to test one of his absolute most famous prophetic claims, the municipal bridge vision. Let's get right into it.
So we have to start with a pretty profound question. How do you actually test a prophet? I mean, how can we look at these massive claims without just blindly accepting them or running purely on emotion? A lot of times, people kind of assume that faith and reason are like oil and water. They just don't mix. But if you look at our sources on theology, God is rational. The principles of good reason actually flow from that nature. Logic isn't just some secular invention, it's the study of right reason. It's a tool. So if someone steps up and claims to speak for the divine, well, those claims are absolutely subject to the laws of logic and objective reality. You do not have to check your brain at the door to test a spiritual claim. So how do we do it? We look at their specific testable predictions.
Now, what is really fascinating here is the sheer specificity of Branham's claim about the Louisville Municipal Bridge. He told this story a bunch of times. The core of it, he claimed that when he was just a little boy playing marbles, he had this vivid vision of a massive bridge spanning the Ohio River, and he specifically counted 16 men falling off that bridge and drowning. He even claimed that exactly 22 years later, that precise event played out in real life during the bridge's construction. 16 men dropped off and drowned. I mean, it's a super dramatic prediction, right? Specific numbers, a specific timeline, no vague generalities here.
But before we start digging through historical archives, we need to lay down our ground rules using the law of non-contradiction. This is like Logic 101. It basically means two contradictory statements cannot both be true at the exact same time and in the same sense. A is not non-A. Why does this matter for us? Because a prophetic claim and a historical reality cannot contradict each other and both be true. If history says one thing happened and the prophecy says the total opposite, well, one of them is false, period. When things don't line up, we can't just shrug it off as a mystery. We've got to face the facts objectively. To make sure our proof is undeniable, we're bringing in a classic logical structure called a syllogism. Sounds fancy, but it's really just a way to organize our thoughts. It's a framework. It guarantees that if our starting facts are solid, the conclusion we reach is absolutely inescapable. We're applying right reason to theological claims to see if they hold water. It works like a simple 1-2-3 punch. 1. The major premise. That's our undeniable general rule. 2. The minor premise. The specific historical facts we uncover. And 3. The conclusion. That's the logical deduction that just has to follow if steps 1 and 2 are true. It's like a puzzle falling perfectly into place.
So for step 1, our major premise comes straight from the biblical standard of Deuteronomy 18. This gives us a totally uncompromising one strike and you're out rule. The Old Testament standard was incredibly clear. God backs up the words of true prophets. If a prophet makes even a single prediction that doesn't happen, they fail the test. The vision has to be fulfilled perfectly. No excuses, no, oh, I just misremembered the details. This gives us our rock-solid general rule. A true prophet's predictive words simply do not fail.
Section 2. Investigating the evidence and exposing the true history of the municipal bridge.
All right, here is where things get really interesting. When we take the prophetic claims and put them right next to the actual historical reality, stuff gathered from over 400 hours of archival research, massive inconsistencies pop up immediately. Branham claims 16 men died. The historical records, only 2. He claimed they died by drowning. The records show 0 drownings. He claimed this all happened 22 years after his vision as a 5 or 6-year-old, which puts us around 1936. But actually, the bridge was built and dedicated way earlier, in 1928 and 1929.
Let's look at the actual documented deaths. Front-page newspaper archives confirm that only 2 tragic deaths happened during the entire construction project. And honestly, neither of them match the dramatic drownings from the prophecy. On June 19, 1929, a worker named Richard Pilton died after being hit in the head by an iron crank. A few months later, September 10th, Lloyd McWill lost his footing and fell, landing on some construction equipment staged on a barge directly below the bridge. The newspapers explicitly state these were the first and second fatalities. Neither guy fell in the water, neither guy drowned.
Now, I know some folks defending the prophecy have said, well, a massive flood in 1937 destroyed all the local historical records. That's why we can't find proof. Actually, scratch that. The Coast Guard logbooks are safely housed in Atlanta, and they definitively prove no drownings happened. The United States Coast Guard Life Saving Station number 10 was situated right next to the bridge. They kept meticulous daily logs of every single rescue and recovery operation. Every single one. And researchers combed through those logs from May 1928 all the way through December 1939. Want to guess how many bridge construction drownings were recorded? 0. The flood didn't wash the evidence away. The evidence just literally doesn't exist.
And then there's the timeline. When you map these dates out loud, the 22 years later claim just completely falls apart. The math ain't mathing. Branham said he was about 5 or 6 when he had the vision. That's roughly 1914. Add 22 years to that, you get 1936. But remember, the bridge was finished in 1929. In 1936, the only notable thing that happened with that bridge was that they lowered the toll price. Nobody fell off. Nobody drowned. The timeline is objectively false.
So you're probably wondering, where did he even get this highly specific story of 16 men drowning? Well, historical context points to a massive mix-up. There was a totally different tragedy on the nearby Big 4 Railroad Bridge about a half-mile upstream. But it happened in January 1890, way before Branham was even born. A caisson collapsed, plunging workers into the furious waves of the freezing Ohio River. And the newspaper headlines at the time literally read, 16 men killed. It is highly probable that Branham heard stories of this famous local tragedy growing up and eventually conflated it in his mind with the newer Municipal bridge. Using a bit of the Socratic method here, we have to pause and ask, how could a supposedly perfect divine vision be completely wrong on every single historical metric? If we step back and look at this totally impartially, how do we process a prophecy that misses on the number of victims, misses on the cause of death, and misses on the timeline? Going back to our law of non-contradiction, Branham's claim that 16 men drowned and the Coast Guard's rock-solid record that 0 men drowned cannot both be true. And that brings us to our minor premise. Guided by the law of non-contradiction and some pretty undeniable historical data, the facts speak for themselves. The newspapers, the Coast Guard logs, the basic math of the timeline, they all point to the exact same reality. The vision, as William Branham described it, simply did not happen. So let's bring it all together. Let's finish out our syllogism. Step 1, our major premise from Deuteronomy, a true prophet's words do not fail. Step 2, our minor premise from historical fact. Branham's municipal bridge vision undeniably failed. Step 3, the logical conclusion. William Branham cannot be considered a true prophet of God. Notice, we didn't arrive here by getting emotional or trying to be spiritually elitist. We got here through an objective, rational, step-by-step analysis of the facts. I want to leave you with this final thought today. When the evidence speaks, will we use our reason to listen? Never feel like you have to sacrifice your intellect. Always test extraordinary claims with objective logic and truth. Evaluating a claim isn't about lacking faith. It's about using the rational mind you were given to understand reality. When any movement tells you to ignore the facts, ignore the math, and ignore the historical archives, you've really got to ask yourself, are you following truth or are you following a counterfeit? Keep asking those hard questions, keep demanding evidence, and keep using reason. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.